771 Delta Sierra, are you back to the runway?
Affirmative, back to runway 19.
771 Delta Sierra, Roger, make a 180 and back taxi on the runway.
180 for 191 Delta Sierra.
Hey guys, Mike here. Welcome to Mojo Grip. Today we're going to be talking about some of the scams that you should watch out for as a student. Okay, now generally speaking, I like to promote aviation, and in order for more people to get in the skies, you need flight schools. But that said, for every good and reliable flight school there's probably 3 out there with shady practices. All right, so I'm going to talk about 5 things that you should look out for as a student, and some of these things I experienced myself, and I didn't know until after the fact. Okay, so let's jump into it. The first way a flight school can cheat you as a student is maintenance. All right, so you think of maintenance and you're like, okay, how does this affect me? First of all, maintenance can be a life and death situation, and you should know as pilot in command, you're always responsible, do your pre-flight and things like that. But that said, a lot of times you can only see things on the outside. You never know what could be wrong or inside the engine or whatever have you. So, but always do your pre-flight. Now, this is how a school can take advantage of you with their maintenance schedule. So, I'll give you an example. When I was training to fly, around 25-30 hours, I started flying with a steam gauge, and I expected to solo around 20-30 hours. And around 25 hours or so, I would, let my instructor know, okay, can you get me ready or scheduled to solo? And one particular incident was the airplane that I was flying, the fuel gauge was messed up. For a while, the fuel gauge, something was wrong with it, and I remember multiple times I try to ask, hey, are you gonna let me solo? And the response would be, well, you're not legally, I can't let you solo because we have to fix the fuel gauge. So that took a while. For about, I would say at least 10-15 hours, they just kept me flying. I would just come in and fly, and that fuel gauge was never fixed. So at some point, I just got fed up, and I was like, okay, if this thing is gonna hold me back, then just put me in another plane. And so 2 things I want you guys to take from this. First, with that fuel gauge not being fixed, they let me fly more and more. And obviously, the more I fly, the more the school is getting paid. All right, so now I don't know for sure if they didn't fix it on purpose, but just my observation, for 10, 15, 20 hours, that fuel gauge was never fixed. So because of that, I just kept flying. I never got to solo and moved to my next step. The second thing was, because that fuel gauge was bad, I had to upgrade to another airplane. And by upgrade, I mean I had to pay $40 more, no, not 40, $30 more per hour. So the steam gauge that I was renting was around $115 an hour, but in order for me to get into another plane, the other plane cost $145 an hour. So essentially, I was paying $30 more per hour. So in a way, it's like being pushed to a corner. If that ever happens to you, or you notice something like that, you either want to change school or really push the school to fix the damn airplane. Don't let them allow you to fly in an airplane that has issues here and there, or where they're neglectful about the maintenance, because at the end of the day, it's gonna cost you, not them. They're gonna make more money off of you. You're not ready to solo. Okay, this is one that I know so personally, and in my experience, this happened to me. The school kept telling me I wasn't ready. All right, so for example, the school that I trained in at SoCal, they have a schedule where you train with your instructor, and then whenever you're ready to say solo or go for your check ride, you have to schedule with a chief instructor, and it's called like a phase check. So a phase check, they check to see whatever requirement you need to solo or to go on your check ride. So my instructor kept telling me I wasn't ready to solo, 1, because of the airplane that was faulty, and 2, I need to go through a phase check. So guess what? every time, I think for my solo, I went for a face check once. I believe it's once, and I failed according to the chief pilot. He's like, well, you did this wrong. For full detail on that story, you can click the video here where I talk more about it. But anyway, at the end of that face check, they're like, well, you need to continue training for you to solo. And this was probably, I was post like 30-40 hours at this point. All right, long story cut short, I did not solo until 60 hours. Okay, if you're a student listening to this, you don't need 60 hours to solo. Typically 20 hours you should be soloing. I've even heard of some people that go in their solo 10-15 hours. If your school keeps holding you back and telling you you're not ready to solo, they're trying to milk you out of more cash. Another thing you want to look out for is if your school has a steep cancellation policy. Okay, so generally in flight schools, the way you fly is you rent an airplane for a fee, and then you also pay your instructor fees. Now, because there's a lot of students, depending on where you are, you have to basically schedule and rent your plane ahead of time. So for example, today's Wednesday. Okay, so say you want to fly on Friday, all right? What you would do is you schedule the airplane for Friday at say 12 p.m. and you're scheduled to fly. Now, if something happens either to your personal schedule or say weather happens, first of all, you're most likely not going to be able to cancel your flight if it's just something personal, except maybe somebody died. If it's you maybe working late or whatever have you, they will charge you for that flight. So if you're gonna schedule for a specific time and date, you better be able to show up. But here's my point. Sometimes you have no option but to cancel. And I've experienced this during my training where I remember on several occasions, not once, not twice, but several occasions where the weather would just be bad. Usually when I was training, I would wake up that day and I would look at the weather. I would look at the forecast and check the meters and everything and make sure, okay, am I gonna be able to fly today? And what I usually do is, if the forecast is showing me that, okay, it's gonna be cloudy, low ceilings till say 3 p.m. or so, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna be able to fly today. And I'll just pick up the phone, call the school and let them know, hey, the weather is not looking great, so I would like to reschedule. And on several occasions, I've done that, and they would tell me, well, it looks like it's gonna clear up, so you need to come and fly because you rented the airplane for that time or for that block. And on several occasions, I would go there, and I've had times where we've had to fly on questionable weather, all right? And also I've had time where I would go there and they would tell me the same exact thing. Okay, you're not gonna be able to fly today, so we're just gonna cancel your flight anyway. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? First of all, it takes me at least an hour to travel to the school, and then I would get there and they would tell me the same exact thing that I called them about just a few hours ago. And like, well, yeah, it looks like the weather is not gonna let off, so you're gonna cancel this flight. All right, so that's one instance. There's been other instances in talking to other students where they show up. At one particular story, there was a student who showed up to fly that day, and he had to wait an hour and a half, almost 2 hours for the airplane. So when he got there, apparently the airplane was not even ready. The airplane was at the shop getting fixed. And he's like, okay, well, this is not my fault. This is the school negligence to fix the airplane before I'm able to fly it. And the school would not let him cancel. They're like, well, you just have to wait. The airplane is getting fixed. Once it's fixed, then you can go on your flight. Basically, they didn't give two rat-ass about this guy's schedule. They didn't care if he had to be somewhere else. They didn't care if he had to go to work or not. They just said, you booked this flight, you're gonna fly, damn it. And I remember the guy just so upset about the whole thing because they wasted his time. And when the plane was finally ready, there was probably like 20 minutes left on the reserve time that he had. But that said, I'm telling you these stories because these are things you should look out for. If your school has such a steep policy with their cancellation, that's something you should watch out for. It's totally okay. I understand as a business, you need people not to flake on you. If they reserve a spot, then yes, they should be responsible for that spot. But if there are situations where it's literally out of your control as a student to fly, then they should allow you to cancel. If the weather is bad outside, they should allow you to cancel. If it's their negligence or something they did wrong, where the airplane is sitting at the shop, or somebody took the airplane and they're flying into your own time, then they should allow you to be able to cancel that training for the day, because it's your time also. You have things to do also. But like I said, some schools will have a tight policy for cancellation, so you should look out for that. Another way the school can get you is going on joyrides. If your instructor is just taking you out to fly to different places without actually teaching you anything, if they say something like, oh, they're just gonna observe how you fly, which makes sense in a way, but if you're not learning jack, don't do it. Don't do it. And if this happens on more than one occasion, just understand that you're not learning a thing. You're paying for that flight, and you're building time for your instructor. Okay, so if your instructor shows up and tells you you're just gonna fly or go on a joyride to any location, then you shouldn't do that, especially if he didn't let you know ahead of time. Because to me, the way it should go is, if you're practicing a certain maneuver for that particular training, then you should know ahead of time. If you're going to be doing stalls on that day, you should have practiced and read on stalls. Now, if your instructor tells you, okay, read up on stalls, and you did, and then you show up for training, and then he tells you, oh, today we're just going to go to airport A, B, C, and just go there. That's not right. All right, so look out for that. If this happens multiple times where your instructor is just taking you on joyride, understand that it's not about you at that point. They're really just trying to build time for themselves. Which brings me to my last point, number 5. Okay, instructor. Your instructor is so important, because they will affect how soon you're done with your training and how much time you have to train. So I've mentioned this before also. A lot of, just generally around the country, CFIs, and I mentioned this even in my last video, CFIs are really training to build time so they can move on to fly commercial. There's motives, there's hidden motives there. Okay, if your instructor is just coming in to build time and then moving on to airliners, like my situation, which I talked in depth in another video, if that's the case, you should watch out for that. As a student, one thing you should understand is that your private pilot license or sports pilot license is not the end or be all. Your private pilot license is actually a license for you to learn. Okay, so if a school is trying to hold you back from doing that and they expect you to be perfect, that's a red flag. Don't let them hold you back and say, oh, you are not perfect doing this, or you did this wrong. Of course, you're gonna make mistakes and you're gonna do things wrong. And once you get your private pilot license, that's really when the learning begins. So please watch out for these things. And if anything that I've mentioned here, if you notice it, especially if you notice it on more than one occasion, that's a red flag there. You either want to talk to other people, get a second opinion, or you want to change school for the most part. If you decide to change school, make sure you change to somewhere where they have the same or similar aircraft that you're already used to flying. Okay, so that's it for me for this video. If you have any questions about anything I spoke about, leave in the comments. And if you're a student pilot currently and you have experienced any of the things that I mentioned, I want to know about it. Please leave it in the comments below and let me know. I hope you guys enjoy this one. Give a thumbs up if you did, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.